Tri-City Sports Now. You just heard from Asian House Vols Talk, allfortennessee.com. Caleb Calhoun, of course, running that site, and I think he does a fine job. Now, Billy Williford, that's another name. Now, Billy Williford is more of a, what's the criticism that I always give you here on Tri-City Sports Now on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio, or jetbroadcasting.live online, or Facebook, live and archived. And it's our 1420 WEMB Sports Radio Facebook page. By the way, selected highlights of the show over the years can also be on my own personal Facebook page. Also, on go to the video section, that sort of thing. You'll also get them on YouTube. I got a lot of the old interviews up on YouTube. One time I had just about everything on YouTube that we were, about a month of shows. Anyway, I got away from that. Perhaps I shouldn't have. Anyway, lots of stuff here to talk about today. Didn't get a chance, though. Caleb Calhoun's a big Taylor Swift fan. He's coming out with a new song. Did you see? She had Alex Morgan at one of her concerts. Taylor Swift was talking about how the U.S. women's soccer team, was championing for equality in pay for female athletes. Now, I've said this before. Last 3 years, I have seen some studies that say, hey, look, if you look back at the last 10 years, the United States men's team has made so much more money than the women's. But if you look at the last 3 years, the women have made more money. And the times they are a-changing. So, yes, I mean, it's sort of like this. If you're working in sales, this is the best way I could put it. I mean, obviously, if I've got salesmen, if you're at Jet Broadcasting, where you can listen to both 1420 WEMB Sports Radio, as well as Livewire 103.9 on our www.jetbroadcasting.live stream 24/7. But if we just hired some salespeople here, and I believe we now have both genders represented in our sales force. Okay. Well, it's not about what gender, it's about who's going to bring in more revenue. Right? All right. I mean, that's as easy as I can tell it right there. And so if the women's team is bringing in more revenue now, they should be compensated for it. It's as simple as that. No problem whatsoever. I mentioned this before. I mean, think about that. And, here I am. What an analogy I was going to give you here. But Vivid Video does not, what gender are they going to pay more? What brings in more viewership for Vivid Video? They're an adult film company, if you don't know. Yeah, you can pretty much figure this one out, right? Do I need to elaborate? No, we're not going to give people heart attacks right there. But it's a great, you've got more, how should I say, fairness than in the pornography industry which is not necessarily fair, than you do, if you're not giving athletes who generate more money, they're just desserts. That's disturbing. That's why I make that analogy. Also because it's edgy. I shouldn't have to describe why I make that analogy. I really, we're in this community where we're sort of, well, what in the world, and all, he can't be saying that. No, I make it because it's a good analogy. Anyhow, we still don't have the highlights, huh? Still, we got the world's slowest computer, and sometimes our highlights, our sound bites, just don't work. And that's the way it is right now. So I'll go through the other preparation that I have made. Well, I guess one of the things everybody's talking about is Antonio Brown, who's back with the Raiders. And this is another example to tell you how ahead of the curve this show has been. You know, he was talking about he didn't want to play Antonio Brown. New Raiders receiver is traded from the Steelers, where he was becoming a clubhouse lawyer. And then he continued his clubhouse lawyer mentality. You know, what, he froze his feet so that he couldn't practice on them. I still, you know, it's just like, you know, look, I guess we're in an era now where, and I realize that if I sound like this is a bad thing, I am sounding like the old Simpsons episode where Montgomery Burns says, if a fight didn't go 75 rounds, we demanded our nickel back. You know, no, I don't want to be that guy, okay? But at the same time, there are laborers out there working with blisters on their feet. Now, admittedly, the investment in those laborers on your crew is not what the Raiders gave Antonio Brown. We get that, okay? But still, the feet incident, yeah, that seemed to be a little bizarre, didn't it? And I also didn't think that, I saw the pictures right there. His feet were peeling, sure, but I mean, sort of like, you know, well, we've experienced that too after, you know, a long walk or a hard day or whatever. All right. So let's look now to the next thing, which is Helmet Gate. By the way, now Tom Brady. And Tom Brady always, I've mentioned this on this show, Tom Brady always used an old-fashioned helmet. And again, we were ahead of the curve on this in our conversation. Back in 2003, Riddell really started to improve their helmet design. Now they've done it over the years and all this, but Riddell, which supplies helmets, or they used to at least, to the NFL, they were very big on trying to prevent. Helmets are now made with more emphasis on trying to prevent concussion. It's not the way it always was. The first plastic helmets, by the way, which came about in 1940, and Northwestern used them. And I talked about this. They were playing Syracuse. How would you like to be one of the Syracuse Orangemen in 1940 wearing your leather helmets against the Northwestern Wildcats, who are just broken out these hard-shell plastic helmets? How would you have liked to have played for the Orangemen? They were the Orangemen back then, in those days, you know, in that game. I'm sure you would have jumped at the chance. Yeah. That's, you know, that's Headgear's answer to Gallipoli right there. Okay. But that's what happened in 1940, and that's where the plastic hard-shell helmet came about. Northwestern Wildcats, 1940, and there was a high school coach named Riddell, and I've forgotten his first name, forgive me. But he was from Evanston, Illinois, and that's why we have Riddell helmets, and that's why Northwestern was the first team to use them. Okay. And they became popular. Now, the first football helmets of plastic design, and for many, many years, they were basically designed to prevent skull fracture, which is a good thing. But, yeah, 1940, concussion prevention wasn't necessarily on the mindset. It is now. I've talked to you a lot about the VICIS helmet, which is a soft shell. And when this show was revived in 2016, when I came back, I spoke of the VICIS helmet and how the University of Washington used it. Now, I abhor that old Nike ad with Mars Blackman. It's got to be the shoes. Because, no, Michael Jordan, you do not play like Michael Jordan if you put on a pair of sneakers. I've always abhorred that ad. That's the implication that it was giving, you know, people. And it's just not, it's false advertising, right? Gotta be the shoes is why Michael Jordan is such a great player. No, it's because he's Michael Jordan and you're not. The circumstance then comes out with, but you know, you do say this, I mean, I know having better equipment, you know, having a graphite rod when you're, playing golf, that sort of thing. Excuse me, to the Facebook and to cough right there. I do get that. But still, graphite is not going to make you play like Phil Mickelson, right? It's not going to happen. Now, that being said, you take the VICIS helmet for the Washington Huskies, and it's a soft shell helmet designed as much to prevent concussion as it is skull fracture. And it came out on the market in 2016, and Washington used it, and they made the FCS playoffs. Modern equipment does have to help. I mean, it's just like in that case, Northwestern taking a field in 1940 with their plastic helmets against the leather helmeted clad Syracuse Orangemen. Like I said, you had that sort of thing. Well, that's the thing about Antonio Brown. Now, I do understand a little bit where Antonio Brown is coming from with the old-fashioned helmet. Who here, played baseball and was a catcher? And I don't know but I remember playing catcher in Little League, and we had our face mask was the old-fashioned one bar across the face mask. And, now a catcher's mask resembles a goalie's mask in terms of, its protection and all this. But I like that more than the quote-unquote modern day, I called him a bird cage, because you could see better out of, yes, one bar across the face mask, other than more apparatus around in the face mask. It seems rather obvious. And I remember, liking that. I can even remember when Steve Yeager invented the throat protector on a catcher's mask. That was kind of debatable. Do we want to use them? Do we not? Is what Antonio Brown doing any different than, say, Bob Montgomery not using a batting helmet? Yeah, Bob Montgomery, Boston Red Sox backup catcher. He was the last player to not use a batting helmet in a major league game. Could do that, grandfather. 1979 was last. Hold off, Bowder Theater. But I say all that because there is that idea of your comfort against, the modern day protection. I think, though, that one thing, Dale Earnhardt's fatality, here was a guy, hey, I'm comfortable, I don't even want to wear a shield on my helmet, no Hans device for me. It may have been more comfortable that way, but he obviously did not work out for him in the 2001 Daytona 500. And I think that has gotten into that you're going to learn to use the new equipment mentality that has come about in sports and all this. Now, like I said, the new helmets, we talked about them. We were ahead of the curve. I mentioned how they were, even though I don't like the all about the shoes, it was an advantage. Obviously, they had to have talented players, too, wearing the helmet for Washington, but that was one of the reasons why they made the college football playoff in 2016, in my opinion. As well as, I'm sure, great strategy and all that. You had to have the players, don't get me wrong, but that had to be an advantage for them. And with Antonio Brown, I understand the mindset. It's the mindset of, I don't want to wear a seatbelt in my car. I feel so much more comfortable driving without it. I'm going to be more aware without it. That sort of thing. And I've heard people say, oh, I'm happy I wasn't wearing my seatbelt during my automobile crash. In the hospital, I've heard them say that. See, that's the Antonio Brown mentality. And, well, now he's, talking about what? If I can't see, I'll sue the league and all this. Antonio Brown is being reluctant to change. Helmet, and by the way, there's now a story coming out, because Tom Brady was wearing an old-fashioned helmet from 2002 when he came into the league, and thankfully he's never had a concussion problem. But, yeah, the modern day, the really, looking at preventing concussion helmet, Riddell 2003, and then when VICIS came out in 2016, that with the soft shell helmet, That was the next step. And so, now Brady is kind of saying, hey, I don't know about these new helmets and all this. But, yeah. Peyton Manning, by the way, was always, he wanted to know what the newest equipment was, what the newest helmet was. He would go about to, the Riddell offices, and he'd want to try them out, and so on and so forth. So, say what you will. But it's going to happen. I mean, it's just like, you're going to wear your seatbelt. That's what this is like. And that's this argument. Should motorcyclists be required to wear helmets? I feel so much better without them. Wait until the gnat gets in your eye. And I know this, because I remember being a kid, and I liked that single bar face mask. As a catcher, I could see better out of it. But sometimes, just like, it's like, I'm never going to learn how to use a computer. Get me the typewriter. Sometimes you got to adapt to change. And something? Not being able to see out of a modern day helmet? Really? I mean, you never wore the single bar face mask, like a field goal kicker from back in the day did, or Joe Theismann, or someone like that. You always did have the face mask. It wasn't like you were Bobby Lane out there, Antonio Brown. I mean, you can make adjustments with these helmets. You really can. You might want to go that way. You'll be happy in the long run. Just like I could show you on Facebook. I guess I don't want to gross you, but I've got a small scar underneath my chin and all that. I remember, I once got into a car and started it up. Little did I know it had no brakes. Yeah. And, sometimes you're remiss. Sometimes you don't have a seatbelt on the first thing. You say, oh, here I am at the stop. And that was me. Clipped my chin on the steering wheel. I don't know if you can see, if you're watching on Facebook, I don't know if you can kind of see that. Yeah, I was more comfortable, but where'd you get me? Lesson for Antonio Brown. Tri-City Sports Now.